I'm Autumn Brown, frontwoman of the soul pop band Autumn, a queer science fiction writer, a theologian, a mother of dragons, and a healing justice facilitator for social movements living on Dakota and Anishinaabe land currently known as Minneapolis.
And I'm Adrienne Marie Brown, a luscious Black queer witch writer auntie, an apocalyptic cosmic optimist, and a gardener of healing ideas. I live in the land of the Occaneechi, Shakori, Skarura, Tuscarora, Eno, and Lumbee peoples. There's a lot of peoples down here.
There's a lot of peoples down there. And this is How to Survive the End of the World.
Our podcast about learning from apocalypse with grace, rigor, and curiosity.
As a reminder, we have no ads. We are listener supported.
So join our Patreon for exclusive content.
Exclusive.
We are back with our second Artistic Fractal mini episode.
Pew, 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 pew.
Where Autumn and I, who are both deep in our book projects, are coming to you with small offerings of practices, hacks, tools, things we have figured out that help with our creative process that we felt like would help with you all. And it's helpful for us to have these conversations right now because we're in the writing, and it's just like a good reminder of like, how the heck do we do this?
How do
anyway?
we do this?
How the heck? How do we write a book? But I think it's also helpful because sometimes when you're in it, you don't even realize like, oh yeah, I figured something out. And this is how I do it every book now or something like that. And I'm like, people should know,
right?
This is an option. If this is a possibility, is to encourage the writer in you or the creative in you to just listen and hear if there's anything here that's useful for your own creative practice. So today we wanted to talk about moving through writer's block or getting unblocked, getting our artistic flow back in motion. And we have different practices for how we do that. I wanted to come to you first, Autumn, to see what is it you do when you feel blocked, like the project, you still want to do this project, it's out ahead of you, but something is keeping you from actually getting the work done, getting it out of you.
Oftentimes when there's a feeling of writer's block, it's when that feeling is on me. It is because there's some way that the external timeline related to the project is overwhelming me. And my friend Lewis gave me this really awesome practice called the interval method that I'm sure will be familiar to some of our listeners, but I had never heard of it before. When I was embarking on the process of working on my book, Lewis told me about this method for like when you need to do long stretches of writing, like when you have like a sort of schedule where you're needing to sit down and do like, hour to 2 to 3 hours, or it's like I've devoted a whole day that I'm trying to do writing inside of. Trying this interval method where you're basically committing to writing for 25 minutes and then taking a break for 5 to 10 minutes. My understanding is that the reason why this works is because you know that you have to take a break. Or that there's a break on the horizon, that you're not supposed to be working for any longer than 25 minutes, or I guess it could be 20 minutes. I'm sure people pick different intervals.
You can set whatever time you want. Yeah.
You can pick whatever interval that works for you. Yeah. But my understanding is that the reason why it's effective for people is that the limit is on the amount of time that you could be writing rather than like orienting to, oh my God, I have to get this much done inside of the span of a day. Instead, you're sort of breaking it up into smaller chunks and saying, okay, I only have 20 minutes or 25 minutes to work right now. And then I'm going to have to take a break. And obviously you could skip the break if you end up finding yourself in a flow. But there's something that I think is really gorgeous about knowing that even if what you're doing is sitting, staring at your screen, feeling stuck, that can only last for 25 minutes. And then you have to stop and step away and do something else for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And of course, I think anyone who's ever navigated a major problem has had the experience that while you're trying to solve the problem, you feel stuck. And then when you set it down and take a shower or take a shit or make food or whatever, when you put your attention on something else, your brain continues to work on the problem that you've been trying to solve. And it's so often in the case that it's in the other work that you're doing that the solution appears. And so I think the interval method is also really supportive for that, where it's like you're letting your brain continue to do the work that it's going to be doing without having to focus your attention on the thing itself.
I love this. Did you use this in this past writing retreat space?
I didn't have to. By the time I was in writing retreat, I did not need. I wasn't in a place. Blocking. I was not having any blocks by the time I was in the week last week. And I would say most of the experiences that I had of feeling like block or potential for block were at the outset of the writing process when I was still feeling quite overwhelmed by what I had committed myself to. And when I hadn't quite yet figured out my writing schedule. So there was a window of time, like after I signed my book contract, I think I only had about 1 day a week designated for writing, which wasn't really enough. Yeah. And so I would get to my desk and I would feel really overwhelmed by what I needed to accomplish. But once I got into a really good schedule, things started moving in a really nice clip. And then by the time I hit late August, early September, and there came a point where I basically exceeded my word count. And once that happened, I was like, oh, now my orientation to the project has shifted, because now I'm not afraid of whether I'm going to finish the book. And now I'm more concerned about how do I actually make sure that I fit everything in that needs to be here and not overwriting. Yeah. So then I had a different problem to solve. But I would say that for me, the interval method was really helpful at the start.
Okay. It's actually really helpful for me to hear you talk about this today, because I've heard of the interval method or Pomodoro method. I've heard people talk about it before. I've seen people who use it really well. And there's always things like this that I'm like, oh, that lines up with what I've been doing naturally, without knowing it, I'm like, oh yeah, I was doing something like that. So for years, because I would be writing while I was doing other work, I was like, I'm facilitating, and now I've moved everyone to a small group and they're going to be in there for 30 minutes. And so I'm going to grab, everyone's good to go unless they need me. I'm going to grab that time and just jot down some thoughts or whatever it was. Right. And, or literally okay, I've got 5 minutes. I can run into the bathroom. Something just came in my brain. I've got to see if I can just get it down real quick and get back in a reasonable time, so I don't look like, the embarrassing guest at the bathroom party. The bathroom party.
The bathroom party.
It's one of my favorite parties. We should do a small thing about that. But
create toilet creativity.
Listen, I think more people than would ever admit it have done some of their greatest work on.
Oh my God, for toilet. Sure. So,
but I really appreciate that method, and it's helpful for me to think about right now, because I do think I'm in that place a little bit where I'm like, what have I committed to? This book is so big. It still feels so big, and it's still a little unwieldy. I kind of have a sense of it, but I'm still getting there.
One big, beautiful book on love.
It's one huge, beautiful, massive book on love, it can't be cliche and it's not self-help. It's not, there's just a lot of things, right? Right. So sometimes this is part of what happens for me is I don't really get writer's block in the way that I've heard people talk about it. But I do get procrastination. I get this thing where I'm like,
oh yeah,
I'm not sitting, I think partially because I'm like, oh, if I don't feel moved to write, I don't go put myself in the writing mode. I don't push it. I'm just sort of oh, it's not there. So let me do other things. And then what I'll notice is I'm like, I'm doing so many other things. The house is clean. Every single thing that need to be fixed is fixed. Every task is tasked. Everything is done. Right. And so sometimes it's just noticing that, and now being that's part of my process. I'm a Virgo. Whenever I'm starting a new project, there's this thing that happens first where I take care of my business and get everything in order. And then the house has to be kind of, it's everything is in order. I know where I also set up a writing space that I never use. I always do it. I'm like, here's my gorgeous new writing nook.
Interesting.
My gorgeous new writing desk situation. I added Lego flowers. It's going to be so dope. And then I
And
mostly
then you write it on the toilet.
write on the toilet. Actually, I write in the bath, right?
In the bathtub.
So that's the other thing is I was going to say, for me, there's a huge thing that happens with writing with water. Like if I'm stuck. So like when I was trying to finish Grievers, the trilogy, there was a place where I was like, I feel really stuck with the story. Like I'm writing, and it's like, I like what's coming out on the page, but there's something big about the story that doesn't quite click into place for me. And so it's making it really challenging. And I went and sat by the river down here, the Eno River. And I just was like, how do I resolve this? And very quickly it was like, oh, here's how you resolve it, girl. It's like this. It was never a boundary girl. It was always a portal girl. Don't worry about it, girl. You know, like it was just like clear energies coming through. And I was like, oh, got it. Thank you. And I do that a lot. Well, I will check in with water. I will submit myself to water, and kind of ask for guidance or ask for ancestral guidance. I will reach out and talk to a friend, which I find is a really helpful way to shift a blocked energy, is to ask someone like, can I just bounce some idea off of you that I'm thinking of for this book? Because even if what often happens is I'll say something and then they'll come back with something that's like, so not what I want to hear. And then that's wonderful because it's like, no, not that, this. And then I'm like, I'm off to the races again. Like, because I'm like, oh, right. Like you're helping me realize where I'm not able to articulate or get clear enough yet. And that's what I need. I need to get that clear. I need to untie that knot. So, those are
sometimes you need to hear an idea sometimes you need to hear something you disagree with in order to know what it is that is actually happening inside of you.
Right. Like it's like so much of why we're writing is to challenge something that already exists, or to fill a gap that we see that exists, or to kind of make an offering into coexistence, to help be like, oh, I want to build us. I want to help grow us. And I want to say no to the things that don't help grow us. Like there's sort of this big, there's a reason I'm doing this. And sometimes it helps to get in that little back and forth with people and be like, oh, right. No, that's what is now. What I'm talking about is what I want to be,
I love that asking for help thing. I'll just add to that like, in my most recent book process, having people that I was sending material to for feedback along the way was really helpful, both in terms of like, it was helpful in relationship to the issue of a block.
Yes.
Because it was like it gave me, knowing that I needed to send something to somebody, it's like helpful to just like have even a small deadline to work against.
Exactly.
Can be very motivating. But also there's a feeling of accomplishment that comes with getting to share something with someone. You know what I mean? Just knowing that there's someone that's looking at the thing and going to give you feedback about it. And then working with people's feedback can be such a helpful way to unlock whatever feels stuck, because it's like everything you just named about like getting to clarify your own thinking in response to how someone else is giving you feedback about it.
That's right.
And also just getting to notice like how sometimes knowing more about how someone else understands whatever it is that you've said.
That's right.
It's like, it can be so motivating, especially if you have a feeling that this actually resonated with someone.
Exactly. I love that. I mean, it's about relationship. And I think sometimes being a writer, like sometimes the block comes because it's like, that's a sign that I've gotten too isolated in my project and I need to like get back in relationship around it, get some juice flowing into it again. And then that'll help it move again. Right. Rather than being like, I just have to crack this nut in my head. I think the other thing I wanted to share about this writer's block piece, which I think will lead in probably to our next fractal, is there's also something about, there's so many different kinds of writing work. There's like the actual writing, content onto the page, but there's also rereading what you've already written. There's also interviews possibly, or research or other work you need to do for your book. There's structuring and restructuring, making sure that you're not covering the same ground in multiple places. Like there's just so many different kinds of writing work. And sometimes if I'm like, oh, I want to go here, but it's not coming, I'll just pick my attention up and bring it over to some other aspect of my writing work. Like maybe there's someone I need to interview right now instead, or maybe there's a piece of research or reading I need to do, or when all else fails, maybe I just need to go for a swim. Like if I step away from it, if I'm like, for me, that's the time when it's definitely going to come. If I'm like, I'm in the water, I can't write anything down. Then they're like, here's a bar. And I'm like, oh, that was
memorize the bar.
The little writer Damon that'd be hanging out with me. Anyway, so, but that piece around being like, oh, I have agency over stepping into a different part of the writing work, or taking a moment, taking a break. My mind might be fatigued also. And I want to say something here about trying to write during a political time like this, where sometimes it's like it's blocked because I am literally overwhelmed by what's happening in the world, and I can't find a way. I can't find a way to bring my attention solidly back into the work that I'm doing. And I'm like, I don't know. I think this is I feel like I'm in a new level of learning, like how to live with this level of catastrophe and crisis and genocide and, collapse happening all around, and not be closed off to the energy of all that. Like, I'm still alive. I feel it all. I'm grieving it all. It's all happening. And how am I harnessing that energy into what I'm doing? And then sometimes do I need to just be with the world? Sometimes I just need to be like, okay, there's nothing to produce right now. Just be with this and trust that your artist heart will bring you back. And it's like, if I give myself room to feel, I'm like, okay, by the next morning I wake up and I'm like ready to bring something back into the book from the ritual or the pain or the grief. I'm ready to bring that back in. But I just also wanted to name that because I think we individualize writer's block. Like, it's just like, I have a problem, instead of being like, what are my conditions? What are my circumstances? What is my actual capacity right now? What is the actual space that I have to even do this? Like, are those things aligned for me to be creative right now? And if not, do I need to shift in order to get there, So,
yeah, I mean, and it makes me think about, this is just like a idea that I want to float into the ether, and maybe our listeners can help us like figure out who we would want to talk to. But I would be so curious to like talk to people who have survived living in a war zone, or talk to people who have survived, living through like a major natural disaster or a catastrophe that like literally decimated their, like the geographic area in which they lived, and talk specifically about what people noticed about their creativity inside of those times and how they captured what was coming up. Because part of what we navigate in the particular circumstances that you and I live in is we're navigating the intensity of bearing witness to a lot of collapse. But we're also in circumstances where the kind of mechanisms of our creative practices are still very much available to us if we can bring ourselves to them. And I'm so curious to know more about like, what is it like to access creativity if you're in a situation where your actual mechanisms of creativity are disrupted through the circumstances that you're living inside of?
Oh yeah, I think that'd be a helpful conversation.
That'd be a really interesting conversation to have at some point. But yeah, and I mean, like for me, the closest I can approximate is when I've lived through like an intense grief or a family crisis where like business as usual is on hold. And what I notice is that I am often even inside of my grief, or like a kid being hospitalized or something like that, I am still often doing a lot of writing. And it's for survival. It's not something that I'm ever doing for the sake of like, I'm going to show this to anybody. It's like, this is just what's channeling through me because the circumstances are have like made everything so raw, Yeah. So that's just an interesting, just tagging for the future. I'm just really curious.
Yeah, I really love this.
Writing under like crisis conditions.
Yeah, like I'm thinking about, we had Mosa Babutoha on. I think the conversation with Leah that we're going to be airing, or that will air by the time people hear this. But that conversation has some of this because she's of a people whose entire island is now underwater, and they had to evacuate and change and move themselves, and now they're settled in another place. And but it's just this ongoing thing of like, where is home? We don't have one now, and we have to find something new. And so yeah, I think there's definitely some people in our circles who would be good to revisit with this. Maybe we can make another little micro fractal thing with that question answer.
Yeah, totally.
I think the other thing is that I always want to offer is that there's sometimes when a project is not actually ready to be written or to be sung or to be done. And so sometimes the block is not just temporary, or it's not just like a pause. Sometimes it's like, really come to a stop now. And
yeah,
like I've had projects like that where I was like, I'm trying to push this out, and like it wasn't coming, or it didn't inspire me. What was coming didn't inspire me. It didn't feel necessary to have written. It didn't feel unique enough to exist, whatever it was, my little critiques of self. But I've had this experience before. I was like, oh, I don't need to keep pushing that out. I need to keep trying with that. Let it go. And some of those things, like pleasure activism is one like that, where I first started writing about it, and then I was like, not a whole thing is coming. And then emergent strategy and other stuff moved through. And then it was like, now I'm really ready, and I need to return to pleasure. And I'm ready to stand in it without shame, that this is what I want to write about and take up space with. But I wasn't ready before that. And I feel similarly about what I'm writing now, that I'm like, oh, I've been tiptoeing around this, but now I'm ready to stand, full throated all the way in. And, or at least I will be by the time I'm done with it. Like that's what I'm writing myself into. Right. But yeah, there's fiction projects. There's things that I've just had to be like, oh, it's not coming because it's not mine, or it's not coming because it's not time. And
wow.
either way, I can accept the no from the universe, because I know it'll keep coming with other things that are for me to do.
I really appreciate you naming this. And I'll just add from my experience that the way that I've experienced this is having a project like come to a close, or having to pause working on something in order to protect it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
And like I had this experience with my fiction novel where I was right on the precipice of finishing the book, and then my personal life kind of imploded and I ended up getting divorced. But I remember that when I was right on the precipice of finishing the book, I had a kind of elder writer person in my life basically say to me, you need to set this aside so that you can protect it from what's about to happen. Because you don't want any part of the thing you're about to be in a divorce. You're about to be going through the legal process of getting divorced. It's going to be really, really hard. And you don't want any part of that to touch this body of work.
Right. That's right.
So just set it down and know that it will be there waiting for you when you're actually ready to finish it. And it was probably the best, because I remember at the time I was really in this place of like, oh, like my life is preventing me from doing this thing that I've been trying to do for years. And it was actually really helpful to just like let go of the idea that I was supposed to have gotten it done in a particular timeline, you know, and to be like this book will come into the world when it's good and fucking ready. And you know, and that time is not now, and it hasn't come again yet, you know, but but it will come. Like I trust that it will come. And it's better. I've felt over the last few years that it's always better to protect our creative work than to push it into the world before it's ready.
I deeply agree with that. I'm like, you might be in the wrong, situation, relationship, organization. You know, sometimes people, I'm like, I see people do that too, where I'm like, oh, you're trying to write a book and you're not in the right like organizational formation to support what you're trying to do, or you're trying to make it like it's the organization's book. There's all kinds of fun things you do, right? But
there's all kinds of fun things to do.
But the universe will say, calm down, slow it down.
Right.
The other last thing I'll say is like, I feel like you can tell when people push through a block and write, just be like, I gotta get it done. No disrespect, do what you need to do to survive in this world. But as a reader, I want to read the flowing, text, right?
Yeah,
I want to read the text that actually you did whatever you needed to do to unblock that channel and like let it come through. I don't want to read the thing that, that was stolen, right? That was pushed, right?
Yes.
So,
totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
All right.
100%. Thanks for listening to our small bite Fractal show. We're on Instagram at End of the World PC.
And that's the only place we are. You can make a sustaining donation to our show by visiting our page at patreon.com/End of the World Show, the other place we are. And if you become a patron, or you are one already, you get our show inside a show, Top Culture.
Another incredible thing you can do to help our show sustain itself is to write us a review on Apple Podcasts if you're an iPhone person. This helps people looking for good new content to find us.
How to Survive the End of the World is produced and edited by the incomparable Zach Rosen. Transcripts are in our show notes and on our website, endoftheworldshow.org.
Music for today's show comes from Tunde Alaniran and Autumn, the band.